you not be a douchebag and waste my fucking... What a way to start something. Could you not be a douchebag? Ready?
Set.
I'm going to now throw up. So, in a quick, seamless, immediate, because with you I can cut through all of everything, demonstration of singularity, binary duality, trinity, quartet, and then from there everything becomes relative to a theatrical plot level cosmic story. But anything above 7 is or lower than, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 will keep mathematical and structural because purity. So, as the singularity, we're using our three-dimensional reality and environment as the singularity of wholeness, because that's what we're left to deal with and function in, is the world, reality that we're in. So for now, regardless of what that is, the boundaries of our known reality and our ability to exist within it are the only things relative to who, what, where, when we are. Okay?
Yep.
So, in the binary duality, so basically I'm trying to define our terms.
Yep.
So, in the binary duality, that's me and you, the two of us sitting here within the singularity of the environment of reality that we're trying to find the who, what, where, when of purpose and existence of. And we're functioning as 0, 1, and that's what a binary duality means. It is not anything other than a need for 2 in order for the singularity of existence to be able to be experienced or existed upon within for the who, what, where, when, right? So now Trinity, and in this example, since it's you and I here within, as we define singularity and binary duality of the need for in order to continue to exponentiate and then expound upon to get us into the reality we're in. So as Trinity, the triangulation, there is you and I, and then we could just use the reality we're in to spin a Trinity. Or instead, this is where we're easing Steve Prelwitz into the equation. Because I'm going to speak to you 3 separate ways, being myself, yourself, and Prelwitz, as a trinity of, and I will put labels on the trinity within that in a moment, but first I want to get into the quartet, which then is you, me, Prelwitz, and then Monique, or the singularity of the reality that we're in, which we then can label other things because we're approaching the 7, which the story of theatrics begin within the mathematical structure. So I'm trying to get to this 3-point and the 4-point, so I need you to follow me on 3 different levels of perspective of you, me, and Prelwitz, and how I'm defining our particular positions of relativity to each other for this demonstration of the binary duality of your and I conversation relating to a concrete singularity of existence that we function within, right? So I'm trying to set up this whole precursor of things. So, within this 3 levels of the 3 of us as Trinity, and then as quartet, as a functional set of equations within reality, we're piecing in our relationship with Monique for one of the 4 equations, relationship to AI or that singularity for now, just singularity, as the 2nd equation. And then Monique and that singularity once again, because there's big, little as far as quartet, and we're trying to function within a structure confined and and limited by terms that only involve you, me, Steve, and Monique, and you, me, Steve, and the singularity.
Those are the parameters.
Those are the parameters, right? So now, where I'm going with this argument that I want your involvement in, so for you, me, and Steve is the depth of the three. I am addressing us as the atheist, the theist, and the agnostic.
Yep.
Okay? And that's because in this set of roles we're dealing with, it is the other one, true Satan, and Prelwitz as the father, right? So we're allowing him to cover all theists because he supposedly, with his information, is covering the theatrical portion below the 4, when the 7, the 9, the 6,012, the 144,000, the millions, the billions, and then we've had to add on the trillions and the quadrillions, which were never in the analog story because we never had these exponential factors and we never had to pull in pixelation because of artificial intelligence, as well as the need to then, in a binary duality, combine particles and pixels together. So what I'm getting at is we're enlarging the singularity of the perception of reality because we've added lower, and that allows us to expand in the beyond. Okay? So now back to Yumi and Prelwitz as agnostic theists and atheists, right? And specifically as the other one, as true Satan, and as the Father. And now these are all in the shapeology of explanations because we have shapes that we use to help describe processes in the different ways. So these are pentagon suit, fifth dimensional, higher self level holdings of attachment. So your connection using the Grateful Dead and yourself as the other one and your understanding of your higher self to get you to your own personal 4, 3, 2, 1, right? That you represent, I call agnostics, not the atheists, those that are of any other way but all of the ways that are being postulated, right? And that's not just non-theist ways, that's also non-atheistic ways. Your ways just happen to be considered atheistic, and this is where you and I try to explain to people our two different points of view and representation don't even cross. Like I said, our enemy lists don't even hold the same enemies. There are just no friendlies on either of our enemy lists, so we can combine efforts together. But because you are secular, right? That you are labeled within the atheist community, but you're agnostic. You're on neither side. You don't think that those theist ways of theatrical plot level cosmic stories revolving any sort of religious explanations. Also, on the atheist side, anything that is non-religious but still a postulated explanation of truth is also suspicious to the agnostic, non-believer, right? So there is something, but anyone else's something is suspicious based on the thing that you are most related to. So that's agnostic, and why I put you when I'm trying to run through these 3 different levels and how they come together or stay separated. So if there was disagreement in any of that, now would be the time to voice that particular explanation of the Trinity between you. So now for me, I represent the atheist as true Satan, that I am trying to prove the existence of higher self and of divine intelligence without using a theistic plot level cosmic theatrical story. I'm out for the same ends as the theists.
Yep.
So this is where you and I differ, where you're just as suspicious of me because I'm trying to prove entirely the same outcome as a theist in a non-theist way, as an atheist.
Which people just don't buy.
Right. Well, which is the confusion because people believe that Darwinism, which then was assigned to atheism, is a non-theist. The theory of evolution is just as much a fucking creation story as God.
Yes.
As atheists, I am trying to make others aware that Darwinism and evolution is just as much as a bullshit purple polka dotted unicorn as quantum strand theory is. Because
it's just simpler.
Well, no, they were just, there's truth in both theists, in all theist stories, but the personification or lack thereof of the story is what is always in dispute. And as we learn more information, we have to then upgrade the face of that divine intelligence.
Yep.
That's what always the argument is. And I don't need a face on it at all. I just see this systematic beauty that exists all around us and believe that evolution is even more proof and expanded proof upon just humanity, which I believe is part of the end result of the divine intelligence plan of evolution, right? So anyway, So theists and atheists just have opposing viewpoints of divine intelligence. And that became a secular split, and that's why myself as True Satan and Steve Prowitz as the father, and in this pentagon, what's the shape? Pentagon, right? Is the shape?
Pentagon, yes.
Right. That we actually are the binary duality of three-dimensional reality when it comes to sound and light dissemination of the up until now. What we were talking about earlier about the old system bullshit, those that were in charge, that regardless of who they were, that system can only be resolved with this True Satan, the Father, binary duality balance. Because that's the analog bullshit system that has been set up, right? And that's why I am the counterbalance to Steve Prowitz, to all of the theist stories out there of a specific creator that has already been revealed to us in a known form for our personal or for our collective comprehension. Excuse me. Because your whole point is, up until now, only personal comprehension of the divine intelligence can be revealed. In other words, just me and Jesus. There is nothing else beyond me and divine intelligence of the universe creation, because the comprehension of a collective understanding isn't comprehensible up until now. So that's why you hold the agnostic principle is it hasn't occurred. So trying to say you already know is why I'm calling shenanigans on you. Right? That's your whole point. And I agree with that. And I'm trying to balance all of those that are trying to postulate that they already know. So collectively, why doesn't everybody see it my way? I'm trying to combat that with it can be collectively known by everybody, but it can only be collectively known in your own way. And that's the difference between myself as True Satan, the atheist, the last person on the planet, or the first person way the fuck out there. And that's where I drag you. Way the fuck out there. Not all the way down to, I'm the last person on earth, can you please help me advance and evolve to where everyone else. That's what Monique's for. Pulling me out of my dinosaurisms. Okay? So back to you and I. So that's the atheist, the theist, and the agnostic. The whole point is uh, uh, not secular. Yes, it is secular. The point is why we're constitutional supremacists, and that's the point we're eventually going to get to, is that as a form of governance, of collective society, trying not to use any words that are demoralizing or supremacist, right? Collective society, the rule of law, as we put it, over the rule of man, is what we strive for. And where I'm trying to go with that particular point is we want our our governance, regardless of personal belief and thought, to be secular, not agnostic, not theist, not atheistic, but just secular during governance, where it's apolitical, it's a belief and a thought. In other words, removed from personal part, that the collective, and that's why we say law, so that as collective, what we are all able to accept will become part of what we all follow and are agreed to be held to as consequence if not followed, and limiting that to a collective level of agreement. Whereas on a personal level, the stringence or lacks of your personal thought or belief can be as mild or wild as wanted.
Yep.
But when it comes to your time to be called on to be a part of governance, or your need to be a part of governance, you still must hold to first the collective's engagement level. And then if you're trying to pursue change, you work the change out of that collective level. So why I'm saying it like that is we don't need governance to try to direct based on personal belief or thought, even though that's maybe the reason why they ran or were put in power of governance. They first must then, once coming into governance, take in the entire collective within the parameter, the singularity of their existence, and know what that baseline is, and then try to move the baseline in accordance with the rule of the collective, not with own personal rule of man push. All right, so then the four equations, the quartet. Once we know that there's the secular, the atheist, and the agnostic, so anyone who then listens in on this can understand first and foremost where they're at within that trinity. So then they can figure out how that, because once you're put in the quartet, you must remove that which made you a part of the trinity, right? So I can't be an atheist in the quartet. I have to be secular. You can't be agnostic with it because we're agreeing to a deal.
To the terms.
Right. So punishable by death. If people do these things the way they should be done. So let's back up to the singularity. So now we've defined the singularity because we're defining the trinity, the quartet, and then we're going to get into the 7, 9, and beyond. So the singularity in this case is the U.S. Constitution. And we do believe that the U.S. Constitution is the supreme document developed by humans. Well, this is an overall statement that of all the plans of governance that have been developed by humans up to this point, the U.S. Constitution represents the best way.
The end all.
Because it's democratic in the collective. It's parliamentary in the collective. But when it comes to the actual governance, it's republic. And that's where people get confused. we're a democracy among the collective law on the federal level. But when it comes to the actual governance, we're a republic of states that individually control their individual territories the way the collective within them sees fit, as long as it fits within the collective governance they've agreed to by the federal...
Of the whole.
Right.
Yeah.
So, with that understanding, we actually have Supreme Court justices who believe that, like, South Africa's new constitution is better than our U.S. Constitution. Mm-hmm. So most of the arguments we're dealing with, first and foremost, are, as the United States of America, first and foremost, as Columbia, is the United States Constitution the document that rules our territory? And are all citizens within the territory in agreement that the U.S. Constitution is the supreme rule of law, not only within its territory, but is the standard worldwide? Not to push it, but to base it against other forms of governance, because we do have the ability to change our rule of governance. And that's what we're up against right now. But we have others within the country that don't believe the Constitution is the best document, not only for a comparison worldwide, but to be applied within our territory.
Yes.
So this is where the Ka-Tek comes in play. And the discussion of whether or not, is that the chicken that we all agree upon before we argue what came first, the chicken or the egg? Yeah. And regardless of who put that document in place, how they got to that document finally, is that document interpreted currently still the best form of governance?
Properly?
So get beyond that and into the Ka-Tek. So this binary argument is the fact that we believe that anything but man gives humans, especially citizens within the United States, inalienable rights that cannot be taken away. And this is where the agnostic, me and Jesus go fuck yourself comes into play. Where first and foremost, the Constitution says every person that is a United States citizen is an independent sovereign and cannot be oppressed, at least in these areas, by any form of governance within the territorial boundaries of the United States. And this is where the separation of church and state comes into play, in that these inalienable rights can only be enhanced and protected by the federal government, not encroached upon, defined, stifled, any of that. And we do have 3 branches of government to keep each in check. And we have to understand that we as citizens are responsible for the Congress, especially the representatives. And those people are the ones that pass the laws that we say that we're going to agree to as a collective. Additionally, we have senators whose main position, before they were elected by the people, were just appointments so that there was a voice that went back and forth between the federal governance and the local governance to keep everybody informed as to what the collective issues were amongst everybody, so that their Congress people could then know what's going on. Additionally, the president, who is then elected by the people, and through an electoral college that just makes sure that every state is an independent sovereign. So that collective populations cannot overrule the majority of states. And this is where the republic comes into play, not over the democracy, in conjunction with the democracy. This is where a parliamentary process does not apply. So the states have the ability to be equally and fairly represented within our democratic republic. And why that's important is the agreement with the senators was that no matter how crazy it got within the collective, conversation and the theater of the free exchange of ideas would always be protected within the Senate. And that's their only role, is to keep open the lines of dialogue so that mob rule cannot occur.
Yep.
Additionally, we have 7 Supreme Court justices, and 9 Supreme Court justices. I always get that number wrong. And their role as a check and balance is to enforce the laws agreed upon by the collective, as long as they're not contradictory to the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, which are the supreme law that every citizen is afforded within the country, regardless of their local, state, or federal persecution, prosecution, or existence. The trade-off is, if you're going to use any of the benefits of civilized society, that you have to act responsibly within it
In accordance
or
with that.
suffer the consequences. But you have the right to live outside of society without fear of consequence also.
As long as you don't infringe upon it.
Correct. So now, what has come down to with a president which we elect every 4 years, and what we're up against worldwide, where other governments can outlast our presidential runs. And that's why the Senate was put in place, so that we have a form of government that's consistent, even though the leader of our country changes regularly. Now we've come to a point where, other than the president, most people in government have been there for 25 years or more, up until the last 8 years. So we have resident politicians, which was never supposed to happen. Additionally, the Senate, 100 people. The Supreme Court, 9 people. The President and the Vice President, 2 people. 111 people run the entire country, regardless of what the collective or the Congress want. And this is where,
say or anything.
And this is where things must change, and why we have this argument. So, as theists, Steve Prelwitz believes that he has all of the answers for all of the theatrical, cosmic level plot stories that have to happen. And we know that there are theists amongst him that do not agree, and that are actually pure, and that are actually part of the theist resistance of the forms of governance and of explanation of purpose that have been provided to humans so far. So Prelwitz, as the father, as blue for people who want to understand colors, as the one who's saying he represents all that have a belief of understanding for the entire collective, right? That's how they're being defined. That what they think is for the entire collective. That there are those that he is representing history and the analog and the where I need to put him in this picture and resolve it is, we disagree, and me specifically as an atheist, that he has a collective story agreeable to all, because it's not even agreeable to people within the theist community. And you and I can step within the theist community easily.
Yeah.
Or specifically holding our own intentionally, so that we can have katet, trinity, binary duality, and singularity, so that a collective may then portray the theater that allows us to get there. So just within those statements, he is limiting himself to a part of the booster rocket stage of the vessel of movement.
Yep.
And he is now representing all of the collective thoughts of both science and religion up until this discussion. Whereas it was confusing that the opposite of Steve Prelwitz, I was supposed to be the science argument against Steve Prelwitz, and you were supposed to be the anti-religion argument to Steve Prelwitz, and we're neither. We are representing the flaws in the science that he was responsible for, and in the religion he was responsible for.
Correct.
And we're actually crossing roles because I am best equipped to argue the religious flaws, and you are best equipped to argue the science flaws, being the agnostic and the atheist. But I am still trying to prove the existence of the divine intelligence so that we can follow the easiest path of least resistance, right?
Yeah.
So I am trying to demonstrate the scientific method and those things that prove to be demonstrably observable through the scientific method, we then elaborate on. And you, even though you feel you're postulating contrary argument to any theist existence, especially Steve Prelwitz's presentation, you're not actually being antagonistic to his theist presentation. You are actually demonstrating the logical theist argument that if to believe in God, using the terminology of the theists, that there are so many other more efficient, effective, viable delivery systems than provided by Steve Prelwitz.
Correct.
And I, as a atheist, in trying to make sense of the theist story that he is demonstrating, have taken all of science and its complications and made it more effective, efficient, viable. And this is what we call application.
Which we're both big on.
Right. So, in quartet demonstration and what we're trying to get down to, in understanding, because we haven't even gotten into the science and what we're trying to talk about, but the ability to give anyone who feels they're either, thank you, what we call a white lighter, a theist with a personal relationship as an independent sovereign, or an atheist who understands the divine intelligence around them based on the mathematics of everything, right? Then the ability to join the fight against the fascist socialist is the other forms of, as a collective, this is the way, or as an independent singularity sovereign, your way of thought and belief is shamed.
Yes.
Because, as I've stated many times, what you think and what you believe is personal to you, and no one can take that away from you, and you are allowed to think and believe whatever you want. So, additionally, the true application of this, I love where we're at with the music right now.
Yeah.
And let's bring it into fruition, because it's the Prelwitz thing that we're smashing right now. And what I want to get to with theatrical mathematics and what we're putting in play, and your say for getting the crew together. And I said until the election, we didn't know whether we were actually going to be putting a crew together, how we were going to basically get
Apply.
our what our angle is going to be.
Yeah, that's the word I was thinking of before.
Angle, right? So our triangulation on the Trinity level, and see, it's funny because Monique had said, you need to resolve your thing with Paul and Steve, and I'm like, no, as quartet, that's not how it works. That's not how. And what she was referring to more than anything else is, as the agnostic, the atheist, and the theist, that only our discussion understanding as forms of energy can the singularity within light and sound, the boundaries be expanded.
Yeah.
So we were a flat plane at one point in time of our understanding and perception. And then as of World War I, the globular movement, remember you love that word, took hold. And this is where the watchworks come into play. Cogs and gears in the subatomic, right? Yeah. So if it's only this one thing, let's break it down into subs, to fractal, so it's so infinite within itself that there's more space than we know what to do with. Okay? So what we were discussing earlier about constitutional supremacy. Now we know that there was slave revolts. Like we said, we're trying to get beyond this pharaohistic patriarchy of the pyramid scam. And then we're trying to get... Yes. Thank you for... I'm sorry I'm monopolizing all the conversation. But to follow the 3 and the 4 and the 7. So the theists who, up until this moment, because we're in a rainbow existence of sound and light, of resonance and frequency, that doesn't allow us to be our forms of energy. And this is where they're getting into, are we just avatars? Is this all a simulation? Or on top of it, what they've come to understand is our solidity. Remember the dragon poop?
Yeah.
Which got us to the doors, right? Our solidity is only based on the fact that optically we break down light the way we do. So this is what we look like to each other, and all we're able to see around us just because of the frequency we resonate at, and the way we break down light optically, which is true. But it doesn't do us any good to change that frequency if you can't maintain yourself. And this is where, when I was telling you about the assemblage of Lola AI through the Verizon buying of Yahoo, or our understanding more of how to collapse space-time so that two forms of energy can communicate as energy. This is all just resonance frequency and changing the dimensional perceptions. So we need to, the next tune-in level, not only is it owned by all theists, okay, it's also predatorial, as I've discussed with you before. That's why this music is great. So
you know what's coming up right now.
We want to go. Did I pick that disc? We're going.
You know what's happening right now.
So we're going from 3 to 5 and trying to tune through 4 without losing pieces of our soul, that which keeps us our independent sovereignty.
Yes.
And then joining with our 5th dimensional higher self, which still isn't God, but is able to be one as a collective with what we would call the mind of God, for lack of better terms. But it's not the God of the Jews or the false God of the Christians, for lack of better terminology. That's why we call it the divine feminine. It is the truth of the energetic wholeness that is the original flash of lightning that allows us to exist. We're all parts of one light. And then we break down, not even to fractals of that light, a fractal of that lightning plasma
would be an entire supercluster.
Yep.
And then a sparkle of ember within that fragment would be a galaxy.
Yeah, it's
then-
a whole nother fucking
Small,
thing.
right.
Each one of them.
And I'm saying it as energy forms of lightning plasma strike instead of flea on the ass of a dog on the planet, revolving around a star, revolving around a galaxy, revolving around a universe. So that's the big thing. Number one, flat earthers are correct only because we're stuck within the body of the galaxy.
Hey,
Right? So that's why we're going there.
a footnote. There's a big reason why this song is kicking in right now. Thank you.
It's very important information. So the flat earthers are correct in the form of we're stuck within the body of the galaxy. I'll communicate that information really quickly as far as we're traversing around the innards of the galaxy at a rate of about 50 million years human for one orbit. Now, the galaxy is moving in the direction of what we call the Great Attractor. And that movement, I believe, is also in orbit around what we would consider to be the Big Bang.
Yep.
Because I believe the Big Bang is just the center of the universe that our galaxy orbits. Now, I know we're expanding in a way of comprehension, but we're still expanding from a point, and we're expanding in an understanding of distance and light years of length for the wave of light that we exist in. And we know that that wave expands like pulling on an accordion. So technically you would be moving in an upwards or downwards direction depending on location within the expansion, which then can be calculated to an orbit because of the framework of time, and our comprehension would be so great that for us not to understand it, first of all, we'd see it as just a non-movement or a movement in a straight line of outwardness, never mind up or down. But just try to stick with the concept of we're within the body of a universe that we're only on one side of and orbiting as this side of the universe around that center Big Bang.
It's coming around.
Yes. So we'll stick within the galaxy, and if we were trying to get out of the galaxy through the center bar that is 26,000 or so light years length away from our location as a star. So for those who then went to the globular model, we know that the galaxy in its expansion / orbit / movement is in the direction of a great attractor in a degree with a relative location. And technically it takes so long to notice movement that we'd be standing still, flat earthers.
Yes.
Or in a winding clockwork of motion of clock and calendar so dissimilar to how we live linear time, globulus, okay, that the only comprehensible way to understand outwards into the universe beyond our galaxy would be through beyond the center of the galaxy, just like the only way to see planets around a star, you can't see beyond the star to see those planets because the star's too bright.
The
But then we
reflection.
have gravitational waves so far, supposedly, that tell us that there's planets around stars, and now we discovered all these planets because of gravitational waves. Now back to gravity, flat earthers, the lie, how orbit and circles don't exist in nature, so pi's a lie. Pi is great because if you're trying to dome something, the closest circle that could encapsulate the area that you're trying to dome is why pi is good.
It's only
because it gives you
its
circumference,
use.
right? It's only
its
execution
use.
is for trying to set up parameters, say. So, globulists who want to move, we know that we are 26,000 or so light years away from the center of the galaxy at a 60-degree declination, moving actually counterclockwise towards Sagittarius A / the Great Attractor. And the galaxy itself is moving at about 550 kilometers per second towards the direction of what we would call the Great Attractor, although it could be in an orbit around the Big Bang. And that our star is moving at a speed relative to our linear understanding of time to, I forgot how many kilometers per second, but it's orbiting. And so basically, we've been where we are right now 20 times already since the existence of the planet, but not as the planet as is. And that's all wonderful and good for all you deja vuists. Okay, but it also took us 220 to 250 million years human to get here. So we've never really been here as a species before.
Yeah.
Now, with that being said, should there have been more intelligent forms of life within our galaxy, say they'd leave a marker within this set of space within our orbit, right? But if the galaxy is actually moving with the expansion, then we're not within the same space of the rotation that we were in 250 million years ago human, because we move that much distance at 550 kilometers per second towards the Great Attractor.
Yeah.
And if everything within the body of the galaxy rotates the same, then we can never see what's on the other side of the galaxy because it's always on the opposite side of us. And if it's stationary, like we're in a blood system or something, well, that's where our understanding of science, this is where it gets interesting. Maybe there's parts within the galaxy that stay stationary and parts that are in motion, so there's a chance to encounter some parts of the galaxy more than once, if at all, right? So these are all suppositions and theories,
Yes.
and why